Chris Scalzi here with
Matt Howell.
On this episode of the First Run, Matt, we are back in the Ridley Scott Alien universe. He first came back with Prometheus, right? A more highfalutin concept alien film than the funhouse, haunted house horror film that the original was. So it's his second sequel in the franchise, and how does it measure up? We're also going to talk about I Am Not a Serial Killer from IFC Midnight, currently available on Netflix, a film that I've been looking forward to for a while. We'll see if I was disappointed, and perhaps you as well. And then we're going to break down the oeuvre of Ridley Scott. But, of course, in typical first-run fashion, we're going to make it really just weird and dumb and bizarre and make it harder than we really need to. Because that's our thing. So let's start everything off with a clip from Alien Covenant. So, Matt, what indeed happened here? Why don't you break down for everybody listening what is going on in Alien Covenant?
Okay. Well, Alien Covenant takes place, as Chris said, a few years after, or 10 years after Prometheus, but I believe 20 years before the events of Alien. And it's essentially the story of a colony ship that is going to, it sounds like a new planet to terraform and colonize, and they intercept a transmission after suffering an accident, the crew being woken up from hyperspace, that they decide that they have to go investigate because it is their duty to go check it out. And of course, as you can guess, bad stuff happens involving biomechanical aliens.
Bastards. All right, so I want to say something up front too, Matt, that just everybody knows this is going to be a spoiler-rich episode. We're not going to waste any time with this because there's a lot going on in here, and we don't want to dance around it. And there's a few things we want to discuss about this that I think is interesting. Right. So, as you said, we're a few years after Prometheus. If you don't remember, Prometheus at the end of the film, David and Dr. Shaw escape from the planet, and they're going to go find the engineers and ask them what happened and why. And so now we're clearly at the engineer planet, right? This is the planet that they get diverted to, but something's happened. And so okay, where do we? I'm trying to figure out So clearly David's alive. So Fassbender has two roles in this, right? He plays Walter, who's the synthetic that's been assigned to the Covenant, and then he also returns as David. And he's the sole surviving thing on the engineer's home planet. He feeds them some BS story as how when they got there, they crash land and accidentally released the virus, if you remember from Prometheus. And it wiped out all the engineers, the whole planet. But it turns out, Matt, that's not really the case. So just as an homage maybe to the original Alien, when the synthetic kind of is a little bit of a bad guy, Fassbender, his David is our true villain, all right? It's not the xenomorph, it's David, as I drop my pen. So he's got some nefarious things going on, Matt. He's been experimenting. It turns out, is responsible for the creation of the xenomorph.
Dun, dun, dun.
So there's a lot of stuff in this film. I'm trying to think what might be the best question for you, because I'm curious of your thoughts about this. So we all agree that Alien, I think, is one of the best horror films ever made. You're on board with that,
Correct.
I assume, right?
Yes, I'm with you.
Ridley Scott's second best film, which we will talk about a little later on in the show. But and then then there's, of course, there's the sequel Aliens from James Cameron, which some may say is a superior film. Given enough old fashions, I may say that, though it's an entirely different genre of film.
Just to be fair, just last week you called Aliens a perfect film. I'm just throwing that out there.
Fair point. Fair point. Okay, you're entirely right. Maybe I just wanted to work in an alcohol reference. So, all right, but so then we have Ridley's return in Prometheus, which, as I said in the opening of the show, a little heady, right? A little deep on philosophy, a little light on action and terror, though effective at times.
Yeah.
Where does Covenant come down for you, Matt, in the Alien oeuvre? Where do you slot this sucker in? And is this an improvement over Prometheus? Is this an improvement over the original film? What are your thoughts?
Mm-hmm. Interesting. As I was sitting here watching this film in the theater, I said to myself, where would I slot this into to the Alien pantheon? And I would say this. So I'm gonna be generous, and I'm gonna say it's the third best Alien film. And granted, that bar is not a high one to have to clear for hurdle purposes. Sure. I mean, I haven't seen Alien 3 in a really long ass time. David Fincher's first movie, but I remember not particularly liking it. Every time I did watch it, Alien Resurrection is atrocious. Let's just forget Aliens versus Predator. And while Prometheus is really beautiful and it has some good solid things in it to make you think about it, it's kind of a mess. This is kind of just Ridley Scott saying, all right, you guys want a straight up alien horror movie, let's just do that, and just kind of just gives that to you. Now, nowhere near as effective as Alien. This film is a lot more gory. Whereas Alien, and even Aliens to an extent, just based on the constraints of effects at the time, they kept a lot of stuff hidden and out of sight. But this is like, bam, right. It's right there. It's gory, kind of going for that shock value. But I don't know. I was pretty entertained, or at least, I was like, well, at least this is exciting in parts. So I enjoyed that piece of it. Although, Chris, do you think this thing answered too many questions that we didn't really have or need answered?
No, I don't think so. I appreciated the information. I appreciated the backstory. Now we find out the origins. See, I think two things. I think that this answers a lot of questions that we had about Prometheus. I think it demonstrates how integral to the franchise that Prometheus is. I'm curious to watch these two films back to back now to see how they kind of come together. I think Ridley was a little too cagey with Prometheus. And right. As I said earlier, that the film was overly stuffed with philosophy. This one is more like you said. He delivers. It's a leaner film, right? It's not the funhouse horror film that the original film is. There is still some contemplative kind of greater questions, but it does streamline it and focus more on the thrills and the horror and as you put, the gore. I think it's clearly an improvement over Prometheus, and I totally agree with you that it is the third best sequel, though granted, not a lot of competition. So, yeah, I don't know. I really enjoyed this. It's my expectations were tempered. I was looking forward to it. I was excited, but I was still, and I'm not going to rewrite the past. I enjoyed Prometheus. For all its faults, it's stuck with you, right? I remember at the time when we discussed it, and I think it was actually with Dave when he was the co-host, it was something you just kind of stuck in your head for a couple weeks afterwards, kind of still thinking about it, figuring out what was going on. You're right, he does provide us a lot more information this time, but I think it's fine, and it didn't ruin anything for me, and I was actually glad to get all the exposition and information that we did get.
Mm-hmm. See, and I guess where I was going with that is that, so as you pointed out, this basically is the virus or this bioweapon that the engineers use basically wipes out all of, all fauna type life. And it rewrites their DNA. So there's these alien kind of like creatures. They're white, and they kind of move the same way. They look a little bit the same.
Well, I think I don't know if it's so much that they're white. I think it's more that when they gestate, they resemble the host. So if the person was green or red, they would then be that color. I think they just reflect the host.
Okay. All right.
Until he perfects it, which is the face hugger that we now know.
Right. So that's where I'm going with this. So basically the whole thing is that this bioweapon, it evolves and it does all that kind of stuff. So I guess for me, is the alien is it a little less scary knowing that it was this, you always suspected that it was kind of like this bioengineered thing, but you never really knew where it come from. Like, an alien and aliens, it doesn't matter. It's just kind of like this thing that's out there. Whereas now it's like it's like a created thing. There's probably got to be a finite number of them, and then of course it starts bringing up all these geeky questions for me, like, all right, so if they were on the engineer's home planet, how in the hell did a ship, and they were wiped out, how did the ship from the engineers full of alien eggs get to LV-426 where they found the thing in the first movie, which I'm sure they're going to answer in the sequel. But I mean, this started making me think about stuff like that. How did the Queen come into play? How did it develop take control of its own life cycle kind of thing? I don't know. Those are all things I kind of want to answer. And
maybe that's next, And I get what you're saying. It's kind of like the whole Joker thing. He was much more effective in the Dark Knight because you had no idea what his true origin was. Right. So I think that's interesting is that the aliens are just an evolutionary force of nature that not that they were designed by one person. Does it take away from the impact of the creatures? I guess let me put it this way. I could see that point of view and I get it. For me, it's not, I don't really have an issue with it. I think it's interesting. It helps explain why, because initially with the first film, I think conceptually in the back of my mind, I was thinking that they were somehow sentient, that they had targeted that ship or flew that ship and it crashed. But it doesn't really make any sense if you think about it, because they don't seem to have individual thoughts, right? They have like a hive mind led by, I guess, a queen. But even then, we don't know how, the capacity of the queen, how smart, for lack of a better term, she is. So, I'm assuming the queen thing, too, is just an evolutionary thing. Though David does mention that he was waiting for a queen or something to that effect, right? But that may be more... Or mother. He says mother. Yeah. Now, there's a couple interpretations of that. Is mother... was he referring to a ship because the computer system of those ships, those AIs, are called mother? Was he referring to just a host? Was he referring to a queen? Who knows? So I think Scott does still leave us with enough questions, at least to drive us to the next film.
I mean, I enjoyed it. It's just and I understand it created more questions. It's got more, it's got a planned sequel, so you figure a lot going to be answered. I guess it's just, for me, as much as I did enjoy the film, I don't want people to think I didn't enjoy the film. It's just that are you is the alien itself less scary because you're getting every little piece of it explained away? And I don't know. I mean, if I was going to recommend somebody who had never seen any of these movies, I would still say watch the 1979 original first, watch James Cameron's sequel first. Then, if you're still interested, go watch Prometheus and now Alien Covenant, and then decide if you want to keep going with this stuff, kind of thing.
I think you're done at that point. Yeah. I don't think it's the other sequels, especially the Predator crossover films, are worth your time at all. A couple things too we want to point out, Matt. I'm curious to get your thoughts on this. So part of the Prometheus, I guess there's a cut scene. I don't know if it was even filmed, but part with Prometheus is, all right, so life on Earth was created by these engineers. So they're these beings that just get to a point where they can create life. So they go to all these different planets, blah, 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 blah. So one of those planets is Earth. They create life here. And what I guess the story was originally supposed to be, according to Ridley Scott, is that they sent an ambassador here to Earth to kind of check up on everybody and see how everything was going. That engineer was Jesus.
Okay.
And then we killed him. So then they were coming back here to wipe us all out as a punishment, which is the ship that's crashed in Prometheus.
Okay.
So your thoughts about that? What do you think? Too much?
Yeah, it's way too much. I'm glad they cut that, because that just seems kind of a lot of metaphysical hokum kind of thing. These films, like I said, these films work better if they give you just enough to say, okay, for the audience to kind of make up their own theories. Whereas this whole thing about, it's Jesus or whatever, it's just lame. I'm really glad they didn't do that, because it would have just been heavy-handed for sure. And people would have lost their minds. I don't even know if we would have gotten to the Alien Covenant if we had gotten something like that. The nerd contingent would have been like, dumb, whereas, the maybe religious right would have been blasphemy kind of stuff. So it would have been a bad news all around.
Yeah, no, I think it was the right decision as well. What are your thoughts of David as a villain? I think he's one of the better villains we've seen in cinema the last, I don't know, since maybe Heath Ledger is the Joker.
Yeah, I really enjoyed David as a villain. And I think a lot of that just has to do with Fassbender's performance, because even when he was playing Walter, he was probably one of the more compelling, people on the screen. So I think it's really just that's just a testament to Fassbender's skills and how he was able to play basically, essentially, version 1.0 and version 2.0, as completely different characters. But yeah, David was a pretty creepy villain. Although, to be fair, it was pretty telegraphed how all that was going to go down. There was really no. I'm like, when is the other shoe going to drop? It's coming. Just show me. Just tell me. So.
Yeah, there's no big shocking reveal. Though, I'll put it this way.
He tries.
Yeah. So there's a fight between David and Walter, and then Ridley makes it ambiguous, air quotes, as to who wins. One of them ends up making it to the escape ship, but clearly it's David the entire time. But I think one of the most horrific and terrifying moments of this film is when Catherine Waterston's character realizes who it is right before she's about to go into that crypto or hypersleep thing. Yeah. For me, oddly enough, I think that's the scariest moment in the entire film. Waterston absolutely nails that moment, and it was there was not the only time, but it was the most freaked out moment I had the entire film, because it's her reaction, and then Fassbender as well, his reaction to her. I think it's one of the best moments in the entire film.
Yeah,
it makes up for me the clumsiness I think that Scott does of the reveal itself. I think it totally makes up for it.
Right. So wait, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
This is also a nerdy question. How in the hell, so if David is an artificial being, he's an android, how in the hell does he grow a beard, and how does his hair grow? I don't understand this. Like at the beginning of they show the flashback to him bombing the engineers, he's got his coif from Prometheus. When they first see him, he's got hair down to his, how in the hell does that happen?
I just assumed that the way he was designed is that's what happens. That
it's a bad design, Wayland. That's a bad design. It's very inefficient. Sorry, I digress.
But I think it helps. I think it helps demonstrate too, and I think because it's the cutting of his hair, just like in Prometheus when he dyes his hair. It's a tell that he's much more. But he's not there really to serve people. He has his own motivations, his own not insecurities, but his own, machinations. He's got his own thoughts and desires and everything, and he's fully self-aware.
Right.
So I want to spend a couple minutes too talking about Catherine Waterston. If you're not aware, Catherine is the daughter of Jack McCoy, Sam Waterston of Law and Order. Not that she should be defined as such. She was also really great in, I thought, the P.T. Anderson film. What's the one with Joaquin Phoenix where he plays a detective in L.A. in the late 70s? I can't believe I'm blanking on this right now. I'm so embarrassed. So
I don't know. In the late 70s, we own the night. Was that the late 70s?
No. Inherent Vice.
Okay. No, right. Okay,
So
I never saw that. Okay.
oh, it's really good. You should check it out. It's dense, but it's very good. I enjoyed it. But I think that how do you feel? Because Scott really just I was a little afraid for her because she really seems to bog her down in Ellen Ripley mythos. She's a strong female lead. She's got the short haircut. She's even got this small gray T-shirt on at halfway through the film. But I think she does a good job of making the character her own, and I think her journey really works for me in this film. I was worried that she was just going to be, all right, I need a strong female lead again like I did in the first film, so let's do that again. But it didn't feel copyish and second run for me at all. What do you think about her performance?
Yeah, I thought she was really good. I didn't really get a Ripley vibe from her. I mean, whereas Ripley was kind of always pretty steely, from the get-go. Daniels was more, was a little more vulnerable, I think, which kind of helped sell it a little bit more as far as, this is a different character. And, I do appreciate Ridley killing James Franco in the first 10 seconds and never actually showing him in the film except for one flashback or one photo. But so that was ballsy as well. So I appreciate that. But yeah, she kind of sold that whole barely holding it together to kind of taking the lead thing towards the end, but still kind of barely holding it together. I thought she was definitely her own character than Ripley.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess there's a prequel scene available online where Franco's actually in it. I don't know if it's in the trailer too, when they're talking about how proud they are of everybody to be taking this risk, and how all that stuff from the trailer is actually a scene that's not in the film, but you can see it online. There's also a prequel, I think, comic or animated comic online you can see as well. Matt, any other thoughts about Alien Covenant for you?
No, I mean, I enjoyed it. I'd give it B+, I think. It's a good solid movie. It's not without its flaws, but they can be overlooked, and it's definitely the best Alien movie we've gotten in a long time. So good on Ridley.
Yeah, I think also I always try to make a point of this because I love scores. That's a great use at times of the original Alien theme and is weaved in throughout this film. Same with Prometheus. But that Alien theme by Jerry Goldsmith is, I think, a classic. It's one of the greatest film scores ever. So an interesting story behind that too, Matt, if you ever want to look into it. I guess that Goldsmith had presented the music for the film, and Scott didn't like it, and they basically reworked it all. So the other one, the original, feels much more sweepingly epic. I enjoy the one that was actually in the original Alien film, but the original, which you can find online, is really something to hear too. So, okay. If you had I agree too. I would go B+ for the film. So there you are. If you've had a chance to see Alien Covenant, we'd love to hear your thoughts. Shoot us an email at feedback@thefirstrun.com. Matt, coming up on Blu-ray and DVD this upcoming Tuesday, May 30th, a couple films from Criterion. First off, Terry Zwigoff's first fiction film, Ghost World, with Thora Birch and Scarlett Johansson and Steve Buscemi, is being released. Includes an all-new 4K digital transfer, supervised by Zwigoff. Audio commentary featuring the director as well as the comic book creator and screenwriter Daniel Klaus. New interviews with Thora Birch and Ileana Douglas as well. Some other featurettes. Matt, you familiar with Martin Scorsese's World Cinema Project?
No, I'm not.
So Criterion works with Scorsese, and Scorsese scours the world to find all these kind of independent films from all these other countries. Criterion is releasing Volume 2 in a digibook. The first one came out in 2007. This one features films from Philippines, Thailand, Soviet Kazakhstan, Brazil, and Turkey, and finally Taiwan. But that's being released as well. Matt, a comedy, Fist Fight, the one with Charlie Day and Ice Cube.
Right.
It looked like it had a strong cast, but I had no motivation to see this film whatsoever. Maybe we can catch up with it at some point. Includes some deleted scenes. A film we talked about just last week, Matt, the other week, The Black Coat's Daughter is getting its official Blu-ray release. A film I enjoyed much more than Matt, though Matt still liked it. But I found it creepy as hell, and I really enjoyed it. Includes an audio commentary with the writer-director Osgood Perkins. Arrow is giving us, of course, this is the big release for me, Matt. Arrow is giving us Evil Ed, a classic 80s horror film about a guy whose job is to censor movies. He goes through and cuts out all the gory stuff, but then he snaps and goes around killing people as gorily as possible. So Evil Ed's being released, includes the original stereo and 5.1 audio options, and if you buy it soon, you get a collector's booklet with new writing of the film. And there's a whole bunch of stuff in here, including deleted scenes, bloopers, and then disc 3 has the original cut of the film, which is exclusive to this initial release as well. So you'll want to pick up Evil Ed. It's fun. I think it's really, you'd enjoy it. Finally, Matt, for me, your straight to DVD pick of the week. I'm going to go with Illicit. A well-liked parole officer and a beautiful former model enjoy a successful marriage until she gets the itch to go back to work. As the wife forms an unlikely friendship, wink, with an emerging photographer, the husband is dealing with a parolee who proves to be more than he bargained for. As loose ends unravel and the world of secrets, sex, and lies creep closer to home, Illicit poses a simple question. Can you have everything without losing it all? The reason why I chose this is because it stars Dave Ramsey. David Ramsey, if you're not familiar, plays Diggle on Arrow. And he's probably one of my favorite characters on the show, even though he has that really god-awful bucket helmet. Though they improved it, I guess, last season. But still. And did you been watching Arrow at all? I think this is a much stronger season than the last one.
Believe it or not, I am so behind. I have actually not watched any of this new season of Arrow. There's just too much TV going on. There really is.
Yeah. I agree entirely. But if you're an Arrow fan, I think season 1 and 2 are great. 3 is okay. 4 I didn't really care for, but this one I think it's right up there. I've enjoyed it this season. So, all right, Matt, what should we be streaming this week?
I decided to go with a science fiction movie we did for the show a few years ago. Ex Machina is available on Amazon Prime for streaming. It stars Domhnall Gleeson as a tech employee who wins a contest to go hang out with their reclusive CEO at his private home, played by Oscar Isaac. And when he gets there, it turns out that the reason the CEO wants him there is to perform a complicated Turing test. And if you don't know what a Turing test is, it's to determine if a machine or AI can fool you into thinking it's a real person with a new robot that he's created and keeping in his basement, played by Alicia Vikander. It's a creepy, tense little movie. And it's definitely something if you haven't seen it, it's worth checking out. And one thing I did appreciate, I never understood why, if you're going to create an artificial intelligence, since it is going to turn on you, why you would create the robot stronger than you, whereas in this film they do not. So that's at least something he was thinking ahead for.
Smart. Yeah, I remember, man. 2015, I was like the year of Domhnall Gleeson because he did Ex Machina, Force Awakens, and The Revenant. He was in all 3 of those films. That's a pretty good run, I have to admit.
Yeah.
All right, man. Let's move on then. We're going to talk about I stress not, a serial killer, a film that went places I did not expect. And we'll see if that turned out to be a good thing. We'll be right back. So, Matt, I am not a serial killer. John Wayne Cleaver, which I appreciate that we go with the full name, John Wayne. If you ever followed any of the serial killers things, it always seems to have the middle name Wayne, and they always go with the 3. They always go first, middle, and last. There's a reason They do that, of course, because in case somebody has the same name, they want to make sure that they don't get mistaken for the person. So anyway, John Wayne Cleaver, played, I think, by one of my all-time favorite names, Max Records, which clearly is one of the greatest names for a record store as well that I could think of.
Yes, there you go.
He plays a kid who has been diagnosed as a sociopath, right? And he has these kind of homicidal impulses that he's working with his therapist to control. So I'm going to this thing, Matt, thinking, all right, this is going to be a thing where he's having these urges and he's trying to fight. And then I get the fact that he was going to maybe help solve a murder mystery as well. And he's perfect for that because he has these feelings and emotions in him. But there's a supernatural aspect to this film that I did not see coming at all. And there's a few things that I think are really great about this movie. First off, the budget, Matt, barely, not even $1.5 million to make this thing. And I think that's one of the secret successes to this film. It's very lo-fi. It looks like they filmed it on film stock from the 70s. It's very grainy and purposefully so. And it's got a very strong late 70s, kind of early 80s horror aesthetic to it, which I really appreciated. I think we have some exceptionally strong performances as well in this film. Laura Fraser shows up, I believe, and she's the lovely young woman from Breaking Bad, if you're not familiar, who's also just made a return, right, in Better Call Saul, which we're happy about, if you didn't see that last episode, or second to last one. So I don't know, Matt. I really would enjoy this, but it's not the film I expected it to be. But I'm happy with that. I'm excited. I love going into something and getting totally 180'd. What did you think of I Am Not a Serial Killer?
Yeah, I'm with you actually 100%. So I mean, I read the little blurb on Netflix before we watched this, and it said, troubled teen, starts investigating a series of serial murders in his town. Okay, fine. So that's exactly what I thought it was going to be. Okay, he's a sociopath. He's kind of got this connection, so he helps the police hunt this thing down. It's going to be like, this is me, and just with a little bit of a different circumstance kind of thing. No, that is not what happens. Insofar as the supernatural thing, when you see the actual first killing happening, you're like, okay, what is going on? And this thing. Appreciated that. I was like, man, this is actually really, really effective. I mean, Max Records is actually really good in this. He's appropriately creepy when he does his kind of like blank smile kind of thing. It is actually kind of chilling. And Christopher Lloyd is just goes from doddering old man to like terrifying creep is so quickly on the turn of a dime. He is awesome in this film. I mean, the two leads, I would call them the two principals. They are fantastic in this film. And it is actually a really good, surprising little film that I'm glad we caught up with. I like the choices of how they choose the supernatural stuff. It was never showing too much, except until the very end, maybe, which wasn't particularly effective. But otherwise, I think they made good decisions to make sure that they really kind of kept the dread going.
Yeah, the ending had a little reminded me a little bit of Under the Skin. The Scarlett Johansson sci-fi film.
Yeah.
Not as abstract a film as that one is. I'm Not Scared is not as abstract a film as the Johansson one. But still, I was pleasantly surprised. I thought I was expecting more of a, we have to talk about Kevin with a mystery, put into it. But really not. It is more a straightforward kind of horror, supernatural film, but I think it handles psychological aspects of it really well as well. So strong performances abound. Particularly, I agree with you with Christopher Lloyd, and then of course Max Records. But yeah, Lloyd is fantastic in this. His logic and reasoning. What he's is this older guy who clearly is ill, but he needs certain things to help himself keep going. But I think his love for his wife, I think, was an interesting wrinkle in a way to almost, I don't want to use the word humanize him in a way, but it adds an added depth to his character that I think made it that much more interesting. I guess we'll put it that way. So
Yeah.
yeah, no, I really enjoyed it. Again, for me, another B+ film. Easily, I think they do a lot with a very tiny budget. So I was really impressed.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Definitely a B+ film. Check it out on Netflix if you're kind of in the mood for something that's kind of scary and effective and really well done. I'm glad it's out there. I would check it out on your next Netflix and chill session, as long as you're more Netflixing than chilling.
You know what that means, right? It's not really chilling.
No, I know what that means. I know what that means.
I know. Well, we're both older now, so there's certain things that I don't like. I didn't know what On Fleek was for about 9 months. So,
well, we're steadily losing touch, though. We are steadily losing touch.
Clearly,
not quite there yet.
Yeah, makes me sad. Anyway, any other thoughts about I'm Not a Serial Killer? It's a lean little thriller, man, and it's well worth your time. So, plus, I also don't want to say too much. I think we've already spoiled a bit. So,
yeah,
I don't want to say too much more. Just watch it if you like kind of these old school horror films. If you like House of the Devil, that kind of thing. I think you're really going to enjoy this.
Yeah, check it out.
There you go. If you had a chance to see I'm Not a Serial Killer, please, for the love of God, shoot us an email at feedback@thefirstrun.com. All right, Matt, we're going to take one more break, and we're going to come back, and we're going to break down Ridley Scott, but, of course, in our own first run fashion. But first, here's a clip from a Ridley Scott film. So, Matt, that is a clip from Blade Runner. So initially, we were going to do a great debate and discuss what we thought was Ridley Scott's best film. And it really narrows down to just two, right? It's going to be Blade Runner or Alien. And in the end, if you take a minute and think about it, there's one, and it's Blade Runner. Do you agree, Matt?
Yeah, that is the 100% correct and only position that any reasonable sane person should take.
Exactly. So we thought, all right, well, that's no fun for anybody. So then we thought about, well, let's do the worst, figure what the worst film that he did, or the best of the rest.
Right.
We'll put it that way. And then we thought, well, maybe we bring in Tony Scott and we compare the two brothers. But then we thought, well, no, that's not going to work at all. So we finally settled on what is Ridley Scott's third best film. Third best.
Right.
So, Matt, why don't you start everything off and defend your choice, which is?
So my choice for third best Ridley Scott film is Black Hawk Down. So this is a true story, or based on a true story, about some Army Rangers in Somalia whose Black Hawk helicopter crashed, and they basically have to be rescued, fight their way through kind of hostile forces and unfriendly territory in Somalia to get to the extraction point. This film, there's not, and this sounds like a negative, but there's not a whole lot of plot in this film. It's basically the setup, and then and then the rest of it is just they push through what's happening here. And I appreciate he kind of makes Scott kind of highlights the heroics of it, or kind of the sacrifices these men make, but at the same time he also talks about how ugly it is. He's not afraid to shy away from kind of how random and violent all this can be. I mean, it's not like the kind of typical war movie where you have your main characters, or who's going to make it out. It's like you kind of see the archetypes. Any of that stuff that kind of develops, with maybe the exception of Josh Hartnett's character, is it's kind of anything. If it's this feeling that anything could happen, and it's kind of like this kind of long exhale throughout the entire film, which I thought was a good way to do it. Although I will say I do have a very questionable casting decision. I don't know why, when these guys are supposed to be playing Army Rangers and Delta, he hired two Scottish actors who have the thickest Scottish accents in the world, and they do the most unconvincing American accents in Ewan McGregor and Ewan Bremer, who, aka what's his name in Trainspotting? Spud and Ren something.
Renfield.
That's terrible.
No.
Yes, no, it's not Renfield. It's not Renfield. But I mean, those guys cannot sell their American accents. But other than that,
Mark Renton is his name, right?
Mark Renton, that's it. Yeah, but other than that, I mean, it's a good top film that if you're into that kind of thing, you should definitely check out.
Yeah, no. His third best film is actually Gladiator. The film won Best Picture in 2000, a star-making performance for Russell Crowe. That film, Russell Crowe had been in a bunch of stuff, but this is what launched Crowe as a leading guy, right? That would carry a film. Now, maybe that's not so much the case anymore, but still, I think that he is fantastic in this film. The whole film rests on his and Joaquin Phoenix's shoulders. Again, a fantastic performance. Richard Harris. It's not only a grand, sweeping adventure, Matt, but it's also a critique of violence for entertainment. So there's an argument you could possibly make that Ridley wants it both ways, right? But I think what it is he's showing it to us, because the film is violent, especially in the Colosseum fight scenes. But he's like, this is what you want, basically? Are you not entertained? He's not only is it a great line, but he's shoving it in your face. Is this what you want? Because I'm going to give it to you, sickos. So I think that's why it works. There's social commentary coupled with your sand and sword sandal epic adventure. It's a beautifully shot film, a fantastic score by Hans Zimmer as well. Just riveting from start to finish. It was responsible for the launching too of the albeit brief foray back into this kind of stuff. The show Rome on HBO, all that kind of stuff was because of the success of Gladiator. Russell Crowe won an Academy Award for this as well. Just a thrilling film. Black Hawk Down is good, but it is a tough sit. It's the sound design or editing or mixing, I don't know, whatever it is, one for one of those. But that is an intense film that's uncomfortable. Scott does a fantastic job of really dropping you into the middle of what these people are experiencing. And it's an experience, but I don't feel it has the rewatch value that Gladiator does. I think that Gladiator is a more entertaining film. It's something. It's up there for me as a Shawshank as well. I think, unlike Black Hawk Down, if Gladiator's on, if I'm skipping through, I'm going to sit down and I'm watching it again, no matter where we are in the movie. So it does have more of a presence and a lasting cultural impact than I think Black Hawk Down did as well. So I think that really, in the end, is why Gladiator is Ridley Scott's third best film.
And what's funny is I don't really disagree with anything that you say. I think it does have more cultural relevance, obviously, and more cachet than Black Hawk Down does. My problem with Gladiator is and it's probably by design. In fact, I know it's by design. It seems it's kind of fluffy to me. It's kind of a confection. A lot of the stuff is melodramatic. It's very old Hollywood kind of, bluster, but doesn't really amount to anything. And obviously, one of the biggest things I always thought was funny about this is how people took this thing as a historical thing. This has no basis in reality really whatsoever, other than the fact that the Colosseum existed and so did the Roman Empire. But otherwise, like, none of this stuff ever happened, kind of thing. So, you know, I don't know. It's just, it's a fun movie. Don't get me wrong. I enjoy watching Gladiator, and you're right. If I was flipping through channels and I had nothing to do and I just needed some background thing that I could just look at every now and then, Gladiator is an excellent choice if it's on TBS or something like that. But you know, ultimately, it just doesn't feel like it has any heft. It doesn't feel like it has any meat to it. It's just, you know, he's kind of putting this thing out there. You know, it's this homage. It's what, like you said, it's this kind of giving you gore for entertainment kind of thing. And I don't know if that necessarily makes it a better film, just because it's, you know, I would say that the stronger film, because of the kind of impact it has, or like what he's trying to get at, and kind of the way he films Black Hawk Down, makes it a better. And this is, I hate it when we say this, but we do it all the time. It's maybe a better film than necessarily a better piece of entertainment.
Well, Black Hawk Down is more technically proficient, I would say, for sure. But when it comes just to sheer enjoyment, I got to go Gladiator every time. In fact, if I didn't mention it before, I can't remember now, I think this would have been a top 5 for me. And if I didn't think of it, it's sad that I didn't. A background film. I think this is a perfect film for that kind of thing. I don't say that, though, in a dismissive way. I mean, Gladiator does, for me, it does suck me in. So maybe background film wouldn't be good because I'd stop whatever I was doing and start watching it. So maybe it's not. So yeah, I like to just contradict myself halfway through when I'm talking.
Well, that's how these go.
Exactly. So one thing I wanted to point out too, just as an aside, if all this talk about Gladiator gets you excited to watch it again, if you want to go buy the Blu-ray, I want to give you a heads up. Because the original Blu-ray release of this film, the color timing was wrong. It's actually it's wrong. So how to know if you're going to buy the Blu-ray of Gladiator is that the UPC symbol on the back of the case is yellow. That's when you know you have the corrected version. So if you're at a used record store or something, you see it, you pick it up. Make sure the UPC code is yellow, or you're going to get the wrong color-coded version of the film. Color timed, or whatever they call it. All right. I think for the most part, though, I don't know if any of those are still out there, but they could be. So just an FYI for you. It's a much better transfer as well. All right, Matt. So a couple things I think we wanted to talk about. Anything else for you for Ridley?
No, I don't think so. Have you ever seen, and this is not Ridley, this is Tony Scott, but I've never seen Days of Thunder. Is that weird that I've never seen Days of Thunder?
I've never seen it all the way through. I've only seen it, like, bits of it at times. It never really was a film that appealed to me. It had no draw for me. I think it's because I'm just not a NASCAR guy. I think that's part of it as well. So I had never any interest in it. So I've only seen bits and pieces, but never from start to finish.
Fair enough.
No,
I've never seen it. Okay, good. I'm glad we're on the same page.
So that's an interesting question, though. I am curious. What do you think is Tony Scott's best film?
All right, well, I'm going to have to look it up. I mean, my immediate go-to, just for how much I enjoyed it when I was a kid, would be that volleyball movie, a.k.a.
I always think I just call it the volleyball movie.
Yeah, which would be Top Gun. I mean, obviously, if you were a kid in the 80s, like the two of us were, I mean, that was it. That was a film and a half right there, and I can't even tell you how many times I watched that, probably more than I'd ever like to admit. But yeah, I would say I would have to go with Top Gun, I think.
Yeah, I don't know. For me, I think it's either True Romance or Crimson Tide. I like Top Gun, but it never had the impact on me it did other people. I don't know why that is. It hasn't. Maybe I just need to watch it again. I haven't watched it since I was a kid.
I mean, not to call you out here, but I mean, you are a little older than me, so which is not a big deal now. But obviously, when we were kids, if you were 12 and I was 7, then that's going to have a much different worldview than what's interesting. So, well,
I had a friend of mine who wanted to be a fighter pilot after watching that thing. So it really influenced him. Unfortunately, he was too tall. He was like a big kind of burly guy, so he would never have made the cut. But yeah, another film of his that I really have always liked is, even though it's pure trash, it is horrible, but that's The Last Boy Scout. Bruce Willis and Damon Wayans. That is I haven't watched it in years. I'm sure. I
Yeah.
mean, it's an atrocious film, but it was entertaining as all hell when I first saw it. I absolutely loved it. Another one too,
Yeah.
Man on Fire. Denzel's performance in that. Man on Fire is for me one of my favorite revenge films. Though I think in the end, the reveal of what happens to Dakota Fanning's character, I think, lessens the impact of the film. Though I still think it was the right way to go.
Right.
So, yeah, I don't know. Any other Tony Scott films? Let me see.
Yeah, I mean, that's really. I mean, there's The Hunger. Have you seen The Hunger? I mean, you're a Bowie fan, I figured that you would have.
I have not.
Never. Really?
That's a weird thing. I am a Bowie fanatic, yet when it comes to the films, I've never really I haven't seen Merry Christmas, Mr. Lawrence. I haven't seen The Hunger. I've seen Labyrinth a bunch of times, but like for some reason, like The Man Who Fell to Earth, I've seen like twice, and it just never. It's fine. It's not that good. So I've never, for some reason, really dove into his filmography. Last Temptation of Christ, even though it's not a Bowie film, he plays Pontius Pilate in it. I got to admit, I have never seen that, and I feel like I need to, not because of Bowie alone, but it's definitely an incentive. But yeah, I don't know what it is. For some reason, I've never, I don't know what it is, got so much into his acting career.
Yeah. Well, I think as far as Tony Scott goes, I mean, I think the ones we've mentioned are really the ones that are worth anything, really worth your time. Although, interestingly enough, I haven't seen True Romance in a long time, although I agree with you that The Last Boy Scout is absolutely atrocious. I think I saw it the first time when it came out, and I never saw it again. But True Romance, written by Quentin Tarantino, so it's really one of his earliest films. I think it's even came out before Reservoir Dogs, right?
Yeah. No.
Yeah. So
did it?
No.
I don't think it did.
I don't know.
I thought he sold it on the strength of that. Let me see. True Romance is 1993.
Yep.
And when was Reservoir Dogs 95?
I'm looking. I'm trying to find our buddy Quentin here.
I got it right here. 92.
Okay, so there you go.
Yeah, Reservoir Dogs was first. Though I think he had written it prior to.
Okay.
It just was releases, I think, is how it works. Okay. So a couple things I want to discuss too, Matt. First off, from me. All right. So here's the thing. Wonder Woman's coming out next week. Early reviews are great. One of my favorite, Melania Weintraub, who is the AT&T girl. I hate to reduce her to that, but the woman I follow her on Twitter and Instagram as well, and she saw Wonder Woman at a screening the other night, and she was moved to tears. I'm not a superhero film woman. I'm not an action fan, but I guess the message that the film portrays about just women not kind of just standing up for themselves and not being kowtowed, and also Chris Pine's support of her and what she wants to do. She was moved, and it seems to be general consensus for a lot of women who've seen this film, is that the message of female empowerment in the film is really strong. And I think that's fantastic. Mm-hmm. Which brings me to Jerks in Texas. So Draft House is doing all-female screenings of Wonder Woman. It was going to first start at one of them, and it was so popular they added another screening, and then they expanded it through all the Draft House films. So you have to either be a woman or identify as a woman to get into the screenings. So of course, there's a group of people it's the internet. This is what we do. Are outraged, and they're dropping the whole cookie that, well, what if we did a all-male screening, blah, 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 like they basically do for most films, if you really think about it. These action films. Or like the Entourage movie. I'm fairly confident that was an all-male screening. So let's just all calm down, all right? I think that if we're going to have this kind of film that has this message, go to another one of the 30 other screenings you're going to have at your local Cineplex. I think it's great. You're not being infringed upon. You're not being discriminated against. It's fine. Just suck it up and let's move on. You know, I think it's great. I fully support this, and I'm glad it's happening. I'm just tired of this stuff, Matt, and I just wanted to mention it. I don't know. I'm sure you're not as passionate about it as I am because you feel, you know, women belong in the kitchen, just have kids, shut up and do what I tell you. So, I don't know. Do you have any thoughts about it? I don't know if you've even spent any time thinking about it.
You know, this is all par for the course stuff. I mean, you know, the internet, for all of the wondrous things it's brought us, the information that it's given us, it's also given a voice to every fringe group, whether that's a fringe group that you agree with or it's one that you don't. And everybody can make as much noise as they want. And sometimes it gets picked up by the broader media or whatever. You're right. This is a dumb thing to hoist yourself on your petard for. I don't understand what, you know, like, who cares? Like you said, if you really want to go see Wonder Woman, and you know what? And to be quite honest with you, the people that are complaining about Draft House doing this are people who are probably not going to go see Wonder Woman anyway. I mean, you know, or, you know, they're not going to be beaten down the door to go see this film. They're really just kind of looking for something to kind of champion their chosen cause, however misguided it may be. So, I mean, whatever. I mean, you're right. I'm not really passionate about it. I read about it and I was like, oh, that's dumb. And then I just kind of moved on. I'm like, you know, they'll have their screenings. People will forget about it in a couple of days and we'll all move on with our lives, which is, I think, the right thing to do.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think I'm more, and I'm not saying this in a dismissive way, man. I'm much more politically involved and aware than you are, which is fine. But it is, I'm more passionate. Like, this kind of stuff just does upset me. So quick, Matt, call it, because they're getting posts. The ban is lifted Sunday. Okay. Wonder Woman's Rotten Tomatoes score.
I'm gonna go 71% positive.
I think that would be like double the average rating of a DC film, but I like it. 71%.
I have confidence. I mean, I think it's so. I think it had a 65% positive rating with critics, so I'm thinking this is going to be a little bit better. But I can't imagine, and I understand we've been burned before. The initial reviews for Dawn of Justice were just orgasmic and how awesome they were saying this film was, and it was just
what makes me scared.
And this is the same thing. And let's be honest, these are not critics that are saying this. These are fanboys. These are people from sites like this. You know, so I got to take it all with a grain of salt. But I just can't imagine, even with the trailers and stuff that I've seen, that it can't be better. Like, I just have a gut feeling this is gonna be better. I knew Dawn of Justice was gonna be bad. I knew Suicide Squad was gonna be bad. Even just watching all that stuff, this, I'm feeling cautiously optimistic. So I'm going 71%. It's gonna have flaws, but it's gonna be good.
Yeah, I'm actually at 76.
Okay.
Right now. So yeah, I think the Melanie Weintraub, and I know I'm butchering the name, so I apologize, but I think her reaction to that, as not being a superhero fan, not being an action movie fan, but still having that kind of impact for the film, she absolutely loved it. So I think that if it's able to kind of go past the groups like us that are more superhero focused or inclined to like those films, I'm willing to kind of be a little more confident than I would be, like you said, because of those early reviews for the previous films that were glowing and saying it was fantastic and look out Marvel, you know, all that kind of crap. So I'm confident as well. I'm going to go say, you know what, I'd love to see like an 83, 86, but we'll see. I'm still going to go at 76. All right.
Well, I'm pretty confident neither one of us are going to cry though.
That's true.
I'm definitely not crying.
I'm sensitive. You don't know that.
Yeah, you are sensitive. I'm sensitive too, but I just am physically incapable of crying. Little known facts about me. So
good for you.
There you go.
Matt, what do you think about Joss Whedon replacing Zack Snyder as they wrap up Justice League?
Here's the thing. So we are not Zack Snyder fans, as a very hard rule. I think this is becoming a hard rule for the first one. We are not Zack Snyder fans. And initially, when I read the headline, I was like, man, that's pretty awesome. But then I found out why Zack Snyder's stepping back, and I felt a little, I felt like, oh, great. This is what the Germans would call Schadenfreude. Malicious joy at the circumstances of what's going on. Some more reports have come out. I guess Joss Whedon has been actually doing more work on Justice League than just the reshoots and stuff like that. And he was actually brought in to do possibly some rewrites, some scenes. But from what I understand, he's been given a mandate that he's got to stick to Snyder's style, which I guess in a way makes sense. You wouldn't want something so tonally different. It's not like they're going to scrap the whole movie and start over with Joss Whedon, but
right.
I don't know. Maybe we'll see. Maybe this is the last hurrah for Zach on the DCU anyway.
I would see it's tough because you don't want to beat down a guy while he's down. He's suffering a personal family tragedy right now that is absolutely horrible. And I feel for the guy. I really do. And I've said too, I think part of the issue is it's Goyer as much as it is Snyder. Snyder's aesthetic, the washed out filming style, I think, just isn't appropriate for superhero films. Is definitely not appropriate for a Superman film. Superman is hope and personified. That's the whole point. So when you have this washed out dour film, it's just not it's not going to work. So, and I think Whedon is going to be able to interject some of that into this film. Now, of course, like I said, aesthetically, the film's going to look like it's what it's going to look like. I don't think there's any way around that at this point. But I wish it didn't have to happen. I wish, for the man himself, I wish that this didn't happen. I would rather this tragedy didn't happen to him and get a subpar Justice League film than they get a slightly improved one due to the circumstances that have occurred. So I don't know. We'll see. I don't know. I don't know. I really don't know what to say. It's horrible. Absolutely horrible. It doesn't change the fact that I don't care for the man's work that much. Yeah. But yeah, so we'll see what happens.
Yeah, we will see what happens. I mean, we can only hope that Wonder Woman's a success. Maybe it'll be a little more like, because really, you're right. The only DC villain or DC hero that should be kind of dark and washed out is Batman, obviously, because that's his whole thing. But I don't know, man. I mean, the Flash, he's not supposed to look like that. Flash is supposed to be goofy. He's supposed to be fun, Whedon's doing Batgirl, so I'm hoping we get some good stuff out of that. And hopefully
I'm telling you, if that thing comes together, Matt, that could be, and I know I'm totally blowing smoke at this point.
Right.
I think could be an Academy Award nominated film, a Whedon Batgirl film, if done properly with the right cast. And I think they should cast what's her name from Don't Breathe in the Evil Dead relaunch.
Oh yeah, drawing a blank on her name.
Jane Levy
too. Yeah, Jane Levy. Yeah.
I think she's perfect for the role. I think really, I'm telling you, in Whedon's hands, I think everything, because it doesn't have to be so DC does the more director focused. They're not as chained to these requirements that Marvel is. So he could make the film he wants to make. It could be intimate, dramatic, funny. Really, I think it could really come together. So I know I'm being crazy.
Yeah,
but
yeah. I'm a huge Joss Whedon fan. I'm a bigger fan of Joss Whedon than you are because I've seen all of his TV shows, and I love the man. I think I adore everything that he's written, he's created. But I think, and I appreciate your enthusiasm, but I think you just need to pump the brakes a little bit. I don't know if this is going to be
a lifeline, Matt. I need something.
I mean, if The Dark Knight couldn't win an Academy Award, I highly doubt a Joss Whedon helmed Batgirl is going, no matter how good it is going to even win.
Well, let's be clear, Matt. The Dark Knight did win Academy Awards. All right.
Okay, well, not the one that everybody was hoping it would win.
It wasn't even nominated for Best Picture. Yeah. That was a shame. It should have been nominated at least. But all right, whatever. Fine. Let's move on. Let's call it, Matt. All right. Next week, if you haven't been following The Rock on Twitter, he is doing his best to defend this film. And maybe he's right. I liked Cop Out, goddammit. I did. I liked it. So maybe I'm going to like Baywatch, sitting at 18% on Rotten Tomatoes right now. Maybe those stuffy critics got it wrong. Those idiots, those pretentious jerks. So we're going to talk about Baywatch.
Okay.
What else we're going to do? Don't know. Raw is available for rent, which I'm really excited to see at some point. Maybe we'll do that. I don't know. There's a lot out there. We'll surprise you. It's going to be fun for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
So check us out on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. Just do a search for The First Run. Eventually you'll find us. Shoot us an email at feedback@thefirstrun.com. Matt, let's take an extended break. And let's see everybody soon. Take care. Bye. Have a good weekend. Hasta luego.